This is a quick introduction to VClock's demo mode, which you can download from our website. When you run it, it will start up with a clock face. Then every 5 minutes, it will toggle through 12 different example clock layouts. It does this at the top of the hour, 5 minutes past, 10 minutes past, and so on. If you want to go through them more quickly, you can click the toggle button at the top here, and it will toggle through the 12 different layouts. There are 2 other modes as well. The PDM demo, which demonstrates how you could control a 24/7 PDM and how it can adjust time based on the PDM's delay. There's also a switcher demo. The 3 grey buttons let you toggle through all the different example views and clock faces. When you're on a view, you can click on the lamps or buttons, and VClock will simulate being connected to the hardware it's designed to be connected to. So for example, this is a studio switcher, which would be connected to Axia X nodes, vMixes on an Axia mix engine, or SLIOs on a Wheatstone blade, and so on. Each button across the top is a different transmitter. The buttons on the second row are different sources, such as studios or automation PCs. The top left one is the Jack FM Oxford transmitter. It's currently coming from Studio 1. It's coloured green to show we're live because we are in Studio 1. If I wanted to change Jack 3 and Jack 2, I would click on those buttons, they would flash, I would select a source, then VClock would change the X node's crosspoints to the source that I choose. So if I click on Studio 1, this is obviously a demo, so it's not talking to an X node, but if it was, what that would have done is sent the commands to change the crosspoints on the X node. The tally back from the X node would update the buttons at the top to tell you that you've actually switched. So it's a full loop confirmation that the switch has happened, which means it would still be updated if Pathfinder or another VClock changed the crosspoints. Because it's a demo, I can click on the lamps at the bottom to show them flash. They would be connected to a silence detector or vmeters, which would send a trigger into VClock to tell you there is a silence on a service. This mode would typically run on a 10-inch tablet or touchscreen in the studio. It could also provide the same functionality in the background, where the buttons on an Axia Fusion or IQ, for example, could be the user interface. There could be a separate enable button to stop accidental switching. VClock would do the logic and X node control, and the tally back could light up the buttons on the console. VClock doesn't replace Pathfinder, and in fact Pathfinder can discover VClock as a GPIO router device. But for the smaller stations that can't afford Pathfinder or to offer some redundancy, VClock can provide some basic logic functions. If you select the PDM demo, again, it's not actually connected to a PDM in this instance, but you can click on the buttons on here and simulate one. If I click Build, you can see that each time I click it, it adds half a second to the delay. At the bottom of the screen here, it shows you the current delay. The wedge is showing you real time versus when it's going to go out on air. So the leading edge of the wedge is when it will go out on air, and the back edge is showing you the real time. VClock can back time to post-delay time, so counters like the next junction and back time to midnight, as I build the delay up, adjust to take into account the current delay. So for a syndicated show from a studio that's taking phone calls, so they need to be in delay, but they have to hit junctions for people to opt into them post-delay, the back timers will tell them accurately when they need to stop talking. If I press dump at this point now, you can see the next junction timer jump from 2 minutes 10 to 2 minutes 16. So it tells you that you need to speak for longer. The delay would then start building again, and you can demonstrate by pressing the build button repeatedly. You can exit, cough, dump, or build it back up again by clicking on the buttons. If it was a real PDM, the buttons would be controlling and the lamps tallying the PDM. So again, it can be a little touchscreen in the studio, and it can be the control for the PDM as well as the display of its status. If you go back to the clock demos, we're a couple of minutes away from it changing automatically. There are, as I said, 12 different examples. For each of them, if you click on a lamp, it turns them on and off as if they're receiving triggers from other equipment. VClock natively supports Axia, Wheatstone, Lavo, DHD and generic IP, serial and HTTP inputs. So mic live could come from an Axia console, for example. There are lots of styles of lighting a lamp, single flashes, double like a telephone ring, solid lamps, and so on. Click them again to toggle them off. You can trigger on clicks of any part of the screen. So for example, in the middle of the clock it says local time. If I click on that, then it will toggle the digital clock to GMT. It's not the clearest example when we're in the UK in the winter, of course, but it has changed the time zone of that clock. So obviously outside of the UK, that would do something useful. But here it happens to be the same time for 6 months of the year. There is a back time counter below the digital clock, which is counting down to the top of the hour. That can be set to back time to different points within the hour. These 6 time zones across the bottom are actually lamps. Every lamp, there are 32 of them if you need them, can have its own time zone and display a clock. You can have only one analog clock face, but you can have up to 32 digital clocks, plus the digital clock in the middle of the analog clock face and the top, middle and bottom captions, where it says VClock at the top, GMT in the middle and the gap below the clock. They can all have independent time zones, so it's quite versatile. Of course, the logos, colours, fonts, size and position of everything is completely user configurable, and every lamp can have its own logo. We're just about to get to 5 past, so you'll see it switch layout automatically. There are 12 different layout examples. They all work in the same way. If you click on a lamp, it toggles its state. This shows the different styles of lamp. These ones have more of a flat style than the gradient effect when lit. Again, they can flash. You can click on the label to toggle the time zone, and so on. There's an example at the bottom of the language clock where it says 5 past 9. For the demo, if you click on it, it then changes to Spanish. VClock supports English, French, German, Spanish, Italian and Dutch, but we can add different languages easily. And there's a template where you can define your own translation or subtly change it for different dialects and so on. VClock will try to position the lamps intelligently based on how many you tell it you need, but you can also manually position them. Again, if I click Toggle Clock, I get another layout and can do all the same things, click on lamps and so on. It's just going through some different example layouts to show that VClock is fully customizable. There are many different properties of the lamps and clock face that you can modify. This example has coloured ticks around the circumference with seconds instead of minutes displayed. You can also have different styles of coloured dots. The digital clock is using its own font. That can also be a stopwatch or an up-down counter, as can every lamp or caption. If we look at another example here, this is showing an embedded web browser. This is Gibraltar. The question in Gibraltar is always, how long are the queues to get to Spain? This demo is actually playing a 5-minute loop. About 3.5 minutes in, when the video was recorded, someone sent a Skype message. So look out for the Skype notification appearing in the bottom right-hand corner. Of course, it's possible to use real cameras in the demo. Using the video loop just saves bandwidth, and it means it doesn't need to be on the internet. The web browser can be positioned anywhere on the screen or can be full screen and can be used for branding in a studio. VClock can load different graphics or content based on external triggers. There is a good example of this on our YouTube channel. You can have a large digital clock and no analog face and still have room for your station logo in the middle of the clock. The lamps in this example have been manually positioned to fill the space available. This example demonstrates lots of lamps lit in different ways and will make a good alert wall, for example. It is possible to remove the clock face entirely and just have a screen full of lamps. And this one isn't the best graphic in the world, but it's to show you that you can use your own images. All of the lamps are transparent graphics, such as the obit lamp, with the lamp behind providing the flashing or, in this case, strobing effect. Similarly, the FM network feed is an image that is displayed, then the lamp is lighting up behind it. The clock face itself is a PNG or JPEG image, then VClock is superimposing the hands, the digital clock and the logo. The idea is that you can customize everything. Every lamp can have images, the clock face itself, and there can be an overall background. So there are lots of ways you can customize VClock to match your own needs and studio design. These are just some examples of how VClock can be configured to look and how it can be used. Hopefully this has given a good insight into how versatile VClock can be. Please don't hesitate to get in touch with any questions. sales@voceware.co.uk. Thanks for watching.